Hi Dianne, thank you for joining me today to share your Irlen story. Now, you're a diagnostician of Irlen syndrome and you've been a special education teacher for many years now.
Yes, yeah.
How many years have you been teaching?
Probably about 30 years.
30 years.
Yeah.
So I'm sure you've seen a lot in your time.
Yes, yeah.
So my question for you today is, what is Irlen syndrome?
Irlen syndrome is basically a mistiming of the light affecting your brain. As it comes in, the wavelengths are disrupted and your brain is in a way allergic to particular wavelengths. The Irlen lenses basically replace the light that you're having problems with and allow your brain to process it.
Okay, so is it an optometry problem? Is it something wrong with the eye? Or
nothing wrong with the eye. Often a lot of clients come in, have been to the optometrist and their eyesight is perfect.
Okay.
And then they've got severe Irlen.
Okay, so you can have perfect eyesight but still have severe Irlen syndrome.
Yeah.
So for people out there, what sort of symptoms may they be struggling with?
Well, it depends. A lot of people on the autism spectrum, over 50% of people on the autism spectrum, children and adults, often have sensory issues.
Yes.
And often the sensory issues are visual. They
Yes.
can't cope with the environmental cues that are coming in, and we find they have Irlen syndrome, and it affects their behaviour.
Okay.
You get other people who have migraines, they have reading difficulties, words move on the page, you have rivers, you have words swirling, you focus in the middle and you've got no depth perception. There's so many different symptoms. It's very hard to pinpoint until you get the client in, because sometimes they come in with a myriad of symptoms and often it's just pure Irlen.
So that could be quite challenging to live with. So tell me about light sensitivity in Irlen.
Well, I can give you an example of a young client I have who's 19, has never been able to work. He can't live without dark glasses on. We've just recently tinted for him and he has to have such a dark tint because he just gets constant migraines. He can't get a job, he can't go out, even when he goes down to Centrelink, the light in the Centrelink is too much for him, and he was wearing just ordinary sunglasses and they weren't enough for him.
Okay.
And he has severe, the whole family actually has Irlen, but they all have different degrees of it, but his is severe.
So can you wear any colour lens?
No, each lens has to be individually tinted to a client, and tinting, you can have one colour, you may have 12 colours all blended together. So the process is time consuming because you've got to find the individual colour that suits that client. And in a family, each client can have a completely different colour.
So what about reading and literacy? How can having Irlen syndrome affect reading and literacy?
Well, that's how I got onto it, because when I was working, my master's is in reading, and I was a specialist in teaching kids to read, and I would find kids that couldn't read, and discovered a child with Irlen lenses who started to read. And so I started getting into it and discovered the kids would tell you when you asked them, and you have to ask them, words moved on the page. They couldn't see the words. I've had children sit in the clinic and look at the whiteboard and can't see a thing. They get into trouble at school because they're told they're misbehaving and refusing to do work. And they can't see the words. They can't see red writing or they can't see green writing.
That must be really difficult for those children, and I was one of them, and I find my lenses help me a lot. Now, as far as scepticism out there, there's a lot of scepticism out there around the tinted lenses. What would you say to those sceptics?
I've often questioned that because I've been in the system for 30 years and I've tested so many children and found the results. I sometimes think it comes down to the fact that it's such a simple answer of using a pair of coloured lenses. The research is out there, but people are not willing to look at the research. There's tons of research that's done with placebo and blind studies, and they work. But I think it's too simple for some people.
Okay.
So
if somebody would like to be tested for Irlen syndrome, what do you recommend they do?
Well, they contact their local clinic. They go to the Gold Coast website if they're in this area, or they go to the AAIC website and they find their local clinic, and it's just a matter of booking an appointment, ringing up straight away, booking an appointment. And there's no referral required to a doctor or psychologist. It's a matter of self-referral, basically.
Well, thank you so much for sharing your Irlen story today, Dianne.
Thank you.
And I look forward to catching you again sometime.
Thanks.